those who are suffering with Alzheimer's as well. Help is on the way. The FDA has given full approval for a first drug to clearly but modestly will slow down the Alzheimer's disease. Leqembi administered intravenously every other week will get a quote boxed warning close quote because it can cause brain bleeding and swelling. I'm Tyrone Bowman. This is Tyrone Bowman Tonight. According to the Washington Post, and I'm going to take my time reading this article because some of the names are probably will be difficult to pronounce, and I'm going to do my best to make sure I try not to box them up. The Food and Drug Administration on Thursday gave full approval for the first time to a drug that modestly slows Alzheimer's disease, a development that offers a degree of hope for treating the memory robbing disease, but also raises difficult questions about safety, effectiveness, and costs. The agency had previously granted the drug called Leqembi accelerated approval based on its ability to reduce amyloid clumps in the brain, a hallmark of Alzheimer's. Thursday's action was based on latter stage data that showed the treatment slowed cognitive and functional decline by 27% over 18 months. Good evening. Over an 18-month period compared with placebo. That resulted a 5-month slowdown in progression, experts say. Quote, today's action is the first verification that a drug targeting the underlying disease progress of Alzheimer's disease has shown clinical benefit in this devastating disease, close quote, said Teresa Bracecchio, acting director of the Office of Neuroscience in the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. Quote, this confirmatory study verified that it is a safe and effective treatment for patients with Alzheimer's disease, close quote. The FDA action means the drug will be available to a broader swath of people, Medicare said Thursday. The health program for older Americans declined to pay for the drug outside of clinical trials after it received accelerated approval, but Medicare said the treatment would be covered once it received full FDA approval, as long as prescribers participate in registries that collect evidence about how Leqembi works in the real world. Leqembi, which is given intravenously every other week, is for early stage patients with mild cognitive impairment or early dementia caused by Alzheimer's, and a confirmed buildup of amyloid in their brains. The FDA said the drug's label will include a, quote, boxed warning, close quote, highlighting safety concerns. That warnings, sometimes called a, quote, black box, close quote, says that Leqembi and other members of a new class of anti-amyloid drugs can cause brain swelling and bleeding. The side effect called ARARI, amyloid-related imaginable abnormalities usually is asymptomatic and managed safely. But life-threatening incidents can occur in rare cases, the FDA said. These patient deaths in an extended portion of Leqembi's main trial were thought to be linked to the drugs. Although 21% of trial participants who received the drug experienced ARARI, but only a small percentage had symptoms. About 9% of those who received the placebo held the side effect. The box warning also says that patients with 2 copies of a generic variant that increases the risk of developing Alzheimer's, called APOE4, appear to be at considerably higher risk of complications from Leqembi. The FDA recommended, but did not require, that generic testing occur before a patient receives the drug. Elsewhere in the label, the FDA urged physicians to use caution in prescribing Leqembi to people on blood thinners, Some clinics have said they don't plan to give the drug to people on blood thinners because of concerns about possible bleeding in the brain. The Quimby from the pharmaceutical company ECI in Tokyo and Biogen in Cambridge, Massachusetts, is a mono, excuse me for the word, pardon me having a hard time with this word, is a mononuclear antibody or lab-made protein that targets amyloid beta in the brain. It is not a cure and does not restore memories ravaged by the fatal neurodegenerative disease, but many neurologists say having a drug that slows Alzheimer's can modestly is a milestone after years of failed drug tests. Nevertheless, the drug side effects and its, listen to this price, $26,500 a year price tag have generated controversy about the medication, also called lecanemab. Some doctors are skeptical, saying the drug is not effective enough. Others doubt amyloid is the root cause of Alzheimer's. John Avorn, professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, worries patients will wrongly expect the medication to improve their memory and thinking skills. Quote, that's untrue, close quote, he said. Quote, it will just make grandma forget a tiny bit less, close quote. And he noted that patients who get the drug will have to undergo multiple brain scans and make frequent trips to infusion centers, which could be a burden. Some skeptics have said patients might not notice the effects of the drug. In an editorial last December, after the results from the pivotal trial were released, the British medical journal Lancet said the drug's impact might not be clinically meaningful and urged physicians to highlight reducing risk factors for dementia, such as hypertension, smoking, diabetes, and obesity. But Ivan Kuhn, chairman and CEO of ECI in the United States, said in an interview Thursday, the data clearly shows the drug is, quote, clinically meaningful, close quote, for patients and also provides a, quote, societal value, close quote, to caregivers and families. He said the approval Thursday was a triumph, quote, for patients, families, and those who treat Alzheimer's after decades of hard work and dashed hopes, close quote. Keith Vassell, director of the Alzheimer's Center at UCLA, said he was excited about Leqembi, calling it a, quote, a breakthrough scientifically, close quote. But he added that dementia experts would have to carefully explain the medication's benefits and risks. Usually, initial visits with patients last about an hour. But, quote, just a discussion on Leqembi could take 30 minutes before it requires a lengthy discussion of how the drug works and what that means, close quote, he said. Vassell said the clinic will have a, quote, amyloid infusion care, close quote, of experts to review patients who meet the initial screening requirements to ensure the drug is appropriate. He said the group would operate like a, quote, tumor board, close quote, does for cancer cases. 2 years ago, the FDA granted accelerated approval to another antibody drug called Aduhelm. Some of the trial data included that medication slowed Alzheimer's, but the information was so confusing and contradictory that Aduhelm failed in the marketplace and never received traditional approval. More than 6.5 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, and that number does not include many people with mild cognitive impairment who often are not diagnosed. Pamela Spicer, therapy area director at CityLine, a company that tracks global drug development, predicted the initial demand for Leqembi would be subdued. Quote, the rollout is not going to be immediate, close quote, she said, even at academic medical centers. Where the drug is likely to be offered, it might take months for doctors to establish safety protocols and learn how to secure Medicare coverage for patients. The Medicare requirement that patients and providers enroll in registries has been harshly criticized by some advocacy groups, including the Alzheimer Association. They say some doctors might not want to take part in a registry, curbing access for patients. In the past, such registries have mostly been used for complex medical devices, not drugs. But many physicians say gathering data about how Leqembi affects patients could prove helpful in answering questions, and it is not a significant burden. In a statement Thursday, Chiquita Brooks LeSure, administrator of Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, said, quote, with FDA's decision, this is important here, with FDA's decision, CMS will cover this medication broadly while continuing to gather data that will help us understand how the drug works, close quote. Even with Medicare coverage, patients would face thousands of dollars in drug bills. Typically, patients are responsible for 20% of the cost of infused drugs, and it is not clear whether other tests, including genetic ones, will be covered. Most patients who are likely to get the drug are expected to be in Medicare because of their age. If they are younger than 65 years old, because they are receiving Social Security disability benefits. The Department of Veterans Affairs already covers the drug, although not for people who have 2 copies of the APOE4 gene. Private insurers often follow Medicare's lead. John Driscoll, 80, who lives in Manhattan Beach, California, has been getting Leqembi for 3 years as part of the trial called Clarity AD. At first, he received infusions, but now injects himself in the thigh as part of a study to test self-administration, a formulation not yet approved by the FDA. Driscoll, who is being treated at UCLA, said he believes the drug, along with the support of a large and loving family, is slowing his decline, though he does not know by how much. Quote, my memory loss now is not overwhelming, close quote, he said. The article is extremely lengthy, but this is what individuals must understand in closing. University of Kansas City neurologist Jeffrey M. Burns acknowledged that doctors need more information about how the drug works. Close quote. It may be an incremental change or a huge step forward, he said, close quote. But it is a whole new era. Finding patients who might respond is a whole new way of going after the disease. So we'll hopefully that those who are suffering with dementia and Alzheimer's will get the much needed help that they need. So kudos to the FDA for attempting to make a difference. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'm Tyrone Bowman. Never surrender, never